2, 1, go ahead.
Hey everyone, welcome to this very special live streamed IDG Tech Talk Twitter chat. We are really excited to have you here. I'm Juliette Beauchamp. I am here with one of our social media managers, what's your name? Not Social Davidson, Michelle Davidson. Social Davidson. As well as Claire Brown, one of our social strategists. So we are going to be talking about enterprise security. And if you're following along on Twitter, you can definitely follow along with the questions there. You're also more than welcome to join us over on YouTube, where we are live streaming this. Leave a comment, follow along in those comments. We'll be sure to catch you either or both places. And while you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel. So thank you guys so much for coming in and being on video. We did this a while ago.
Yeah,
I feel like maybe in November.
Yeah, I think it was longer than that.
Maybe
Wasn't it? Because I had a new smartwatch and we were talking about wearable technology.
Yes, that's true. We were talking about wearable tech. So it's very, very exciting to have everyone here. So if you're following along on Twitter, please introduce yourself as we have introduced ourselves. And then we can sort of a little bit get started, but I guess what's the inspiration behind today's Twitter chat?
It was kind of my idea because we at IDG do cyber or security awareness for employees.
Yeah.
And I had just recently taken one of the recent trainings and quizzes, and I thought, this is something we could talk about. We've experienced with it and probably done some of the things we aren't supposed to do in the past and learned from our past experiences.
True.
Very, very true.
Yeah. So I guess, do you guys want to get started off with question number one?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so let's get started. So question number one is, when everyone must be a part of the cybersecurity solution, what can companies do to increase all employees' security awareness? Also, a note for our viewers, if you're following along on Twitter, be sure to hashtag IDG Tech Talk so we can make sure that we see your tweets. So I feel like it's pretty commonplace, like you said, Michelle, to have these sort of like security trainings for employees.
Yes.
And I feel like that's probably one of the biggest ways to make sure that employees are aware of best security practices. But I also kind of feel like those security trainings, as helpful as they can be, are sometimes almost common sense. So I think sort of these like real world tests can be helpful. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I agree with the tests. I want to go back a little bit to the training.
Yeah.
Because I think it needs to be customized. I think you need to relate to it. I think you need to know that, yes, this is something that might happen to me and I should not do this or I should do this. And I think the videos that go along with it should be high quality type of videos. So like I said, what prompted this was doing one of our own awareness trainings recently. And in fact, just this week, I got another alert to go do it again.
Yes.
So did I. I
Yes.
got one too.
I feel like we all probably did.
Yeah.
Oh, and did you
enough.
get the test? The email test?
I think so, yes.
And I I didn't fall for it. I didn't click, but I did forward it to a coworker. And I was like, oh no, did we do this? And she wrote back, Claire, I think that was just a phishing.
Yeah. Well, I followed by the book. I forwarded it to the help desk and said, I think this is a phishing email.
Nice.
I've deleted it. And they said, congratulations, you've passed our test.
Yes. I think usually I just delete them because I feel pretty good about it. But what I do think is sometimes I just always err on the side of caution, and I'm just like deleting anything that looks like it could be a phishing email, even if I'm like,
if it's not,
Yeah.
they'll send it again.
Exactly. If I ignored you, anyone who's trying to email me, if I ignored you and I didn't reply, it's probably because I thought it was a phishing email. Nothing personal.
Don't take it
I
personally.
do think people got caught in that test, though. I was talking with somebody before coming in. He's like, you know what? Yeah.
That one was it was a good one. It looked pretty legit, and I was looking at it on mobile, kind of on the fly. So I just reacted. Whereas I think if I had maybe just taken a moment, I wouldn't have fallen for it. But I didn't click on the link.
There you go.
But
Yeah.
I did forward it.
Well,
I don't know if
your
that's
alert
worse.
went on. You were like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah, it just does not seem right. And I also think, in addition, to just having good trainings and having relatable trainings, but also baking that side, the importance of security into training, when you onboard a new employee.
That's so true. Just from day one.
Just from day one, this is something that's important to our organization, or here's our cybersecurity mantra, or, something so that you can always go back to and say, okay, this is this is just part of this
It's
organization.
our culture.
Yep.
Part
Yeah.
of the culture. Right?
Exactly. And I actually see some comments on Twitter about that, Claire, about sort of baking it into a part of your culture. And then Wayne also made a really good point. He said to use realish world scenarios. Tell people about a failure if you have one. That's a really good point. It's
Yeah.
like you never want to be the organization that has a security flaw or a security issue, but if you have had one and you want to use that as sort of a training example or saying, hey, let's learn from our mistake, you could also use one from maybe a different company if you have been blessed to not have one. And learning from real world examples, I feel like would reinforce it to your employees more than just saying, hey, don't click these phishing emails
Right.
or
Right.
like sending a fake phishing email.
Right.
It gives you a concrete example to compare it to.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And also I saw that Peter Saviti, he said to partner with your security team. And kind of like what you did, Michelle, in terms of letting them know, I see what you've done.
Oh, employees partner with the security team. I see.
Right. Yeah. He says, don't leave them out. Join with them like at the beginning. And I think that that's also a good point because I think sometimes we think of the security team, as often this ominous place. And they don't necessarily have to be that. They can be a resource to employees.
Well, I think also maybe he might mean IT ops partnering with the security team. Like I don't even know if a lot of companies have a security team or if it is IT doing all of it.
Yeah, that's
a
very
good
true.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like what Peter said about don't go around saying employees are the weakest link.
That's true. And I think lots of organizations are guilty of that without realizing that it is kind of rude.
I think when
the
you
weakest link.
I think when you sort of have that attitude from the onset, you're then just sort of setting your employees up for failure and also saying, we don't really trust you that much.
Right.
So if you sort of start from the beginning having a positive attitude towards it and saying you could actually be, instead of our weakest link, you could be our, like, you're on the front lines. Like you're the first
line of defense.
Exactly. Just even if
Right.
it's the same sort of message, just reframing the delivery can go a
Completely
lot.
agree.
And so people aren't as dismissive and saying, well, I'm going to fall for something anyway, so who cares? That's why I have a security team. No, make the security team's lives as easy as possible. Yeah. It's awesome. We're getting some good responses on Twitter. And also, if you're following along on Twitter, you're watching the YouTube live stream on Twitter, you can also comment as well in the YouTube live chat. I will be monitoring that. I've posted some questions, and I'll continue to post as we're going along. But maybe we check out a few more Twitter responses and then move on to question 2.
Sure. Perfect.
Great. So let's see what else we've got. So... Yep, Wayne agreed with Peter. Your people drive your business. They aren't your weakest link. They are your strongest defense. Power of mindset. God, it's like he took the words right out of my mouth. Power of mindset. You are the enterprise defender, whether you work in finance or sales or wherever. That's so true. And then Ed is also owning up to that. He has been guilty of number 2, which is saying employees are your weakest link. Working on that, they are your strongest defense.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, Claire, if you're seeing anything else on Twitter.
No, yeah. This is good. I do like that reshaping the narrative.
Yeah,
Strongest
and that,
defense.
that might make me not go, I have to do this again.
Yeah.
If I feel more that it's...
If I feel like empowered
Yeah.
in my security awareness.
Right.
And then we also, I feel like, are getting a lot of responses saying this isn't just a one-time thing. This is something
Right.
that you should be testing and retesting, reassessing to make sure that your employees are up to date with also the most common threats and anything that's, I don't know, crazy and new. And this, I feel like, is also especially important when you work in sectors that are maybe dealing with more personal information of people. I mean, no matter your organization, you're going to be working with pretty sensitive data that you certainly want to keep private from the rest of the world. That's why you have these security measures in place. But I feel like, especially when you're dealing with especially sensitive data, let's say you work in the financial industry or the medical industry, education, when you have a lot of information that are really important, not just to the people in your organization, but to the people that you're serving and your customers, you really want to make sure that you have that information on lock, because that could be a security breach could really affect a lot of people's lives. I mean, you think of some of the high profile breaches in the past few years. I mean, Equifax obviously was a huge one. And that was people's credit information.
Right,
so
right.
you don't want to be the company that has a data breach and then ruins people's credit potentially. So don't be Equifax. But you know what? They've learned from their mistakes. One would hope. One would hope. All right. Let's say we can move on maybe to just question 2. Let's say that, let's say it's time to move on. So question number 2. What are the most common security mistakes people make? Do you guys want to start off with this one?
Yep, I can start.
Okay.
Well, so I was actually just doing some research and I saw a Computer World article that said one of the biggest mistakes people make is leaving Post-it notes on their computer with their passwords. And then that just kind of got me thinking about sort of the larger problem, which is, I think, ignorance. Because I think when people do that, they're not intentionally trying to give people their password, even though you are. But I don't think it's intentional. I think it comes from a place where people don't realize just how vulnerable they are and the implication for a breach. I think people think, oh, if someone gets in my computer, I mean, I guess it's fine. It would be a bummer, but it's fine. But it's not. So I think kind of understanding the domino effect of how a breach on one computer can lead to, catastrophic implications for the rest of the organization. Because, it's just something as simple as don't leave a Post-it note with your actual password on your computer where anybody can walk by and just type it in.
Sure.
And I think that just goes back to the education piece and going back to making sure that you have a organization full of the security army, as opposed to being like, you're already going to cause a breach. I already had that expectation of you, so it's fine if you put a Post-it note with your password. Just kind of empowering people from the beginning to not do little silly things like that.
Sure.
To add to that, one thing, it was actually a learning experience for me last year, was photos you post on social media. So we were going to do this fun thing of having our followers post a photo of their desk space. So their laptop, their lamp, their pictures, photos. Yeah. And our writers and editors on CSO said, whoa, no, don't do that, because all of those can be used in a social engineering attack or target you.
Sure,
So,
Yeah.
I think it's easy to dismiss a security breach as, yes, a targeted attack, but also just something that isn't hyper personal. But when you consider something like that and you consider the implications of social engineering, you really start to realize that someone can attack you. Like, yes, they're trying to maybe attack your organization, but they can gear it and
they can
engineer
customize it. Yeah,
customize it to be you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think too, we hear about these big hacks, like an Equifax or
Marriott.
right, or Target, and you don't think that it starts probably with one person or one small breach, because that the specifics of how the attack happened isn't talked about, just the attack itself. So I don't think that people really realize that it can start with a Post-it or it can start with a picture of your desk. And I think educating people that it is, in the little things, as opposed to it being this, big covert attack where a hacker had to work really, really hard to get information, that it can just start with something very small.
Yeah, and then I just sort of had some specific tools that some of the common security mistakes that people use. Obviously, Claire, like you said, sort of just leaving their computer passwords out for the entire world to see, or the passerby. I think it's also important to consider, I think a lot of security professionals, rightly so, sort of err on the side of extreme caution and I think you should sort of take on a mindset of who isn't the threat, just assume guilt for everyone, which is maybe not the best way to think, but you're in your office and it's your coworkers and they're probably not a huge threat, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't lock down your workstation every time you leave your desk. That obviously means you should not keep your passwords out.
Right.
Other sort of common security mistakes that people make, obviously falling for phishing emails. I think a big one is not enabling multi-factor authentication. That's one that even just in my personal life, I use all the time. You just, especially for something sensitive. And when you're at work and you're at your job, you have to assume that all of that information is sensitive. It's not like, okay, yeah, sure, someone gets into my Amazon account and that sucks because they ordered 10 boxes of socks. There's obviously bigger implications for that with you personally, but when you're at when you are handling a lot of sensitive data at your job, you want to make sure that you're enabling multi-factor.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to bring up something about the multi-factor. I've been seeing on Twitter recently questioning using SMS as your two-factor authentication.
Really?
Like there's, and so maybe somebody who's on our Twitter chat today can talk to that about the controversy about using text messages as your authentication.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw too, just in glancing at Twitter, that Scott Chober brought up sharing too much information on your social media channels, which I think sometimes even something as simple as, the office is closed or we're all getting ready to leave to go to a happy hour, and you don't really think that anyone cares or anyone's paying attention. Or, just kind of inadvertently showing that nobody's in the office, or even in your own personal life, nobody's at home, or kind of just always being aware of if you're inadvertently sharing a vulnerability. And it can feel kind of paranoia, like, oh, should I talk about this happy hour? But maybe just post the picture the next day, as opposed to doing real-time updates.
Yeah.
That's like what celebrities do. So they're not getting followed. They're like, yes, here's a picture of me.
It's true.
Yes,
it is. Well, so back
maybe
in the
I
day,
follow too much reality television.
Back in the day, I had a blog, and it got really big. And when I had my daughter, I would post, when she was smaller, I'd post that I was at the playground, and people would come up to me on the playground and be like, oh, I saw that you were here on Instagram. And that really was really weird. And so I started intentionally doing like a 24-hour delay with anything that I would post, especially because it's just spooky, and you don't think about it until someone comes up to you and is like, oh, I love following you, I just saw that you were here and I live around the corner, so I wanted to say hi. And it's like, oh, hi. Whoa, I don't like that.
It's something that you need to consider. And that is also really spooky. I wouldn't want people to come up to me on a playground.
I was going to add on to something that Claire said about unintentionally revealing information. That can go for when you're on the phone, like at the airport, and you are talking very loudly, and everybody around you can now hear your credit card or whatever information you might be.
Very true. Or even like something as simple as, taking a conference call from an airport terminal. You don't realize someone, at a competitor just heard your, your sales strategy for the upcoming year. So it's just being hyper aware of where you are.
Yeah, and you don't want to be paranoid necessarily, but you can't assume innocence and ignorance, like that everyone else around you is completely isn't listening to your conversation, because people eavesdrop. Like,
they do.
Yeah.
Especially on a plane. You can't help it. I mean, there was this woman.
Especially if you're talking loudly. People are going to hear you.
Yeah, they just,
Yeah, and I think also another mistake that people can tend to make is sharing passwords, either using like the same password for every single account or sharing passwords with other people. So let's say you have one shared account for any sort of platform that you're using, and you're saying, okay, like this is our account for 6 of us on our team, and then everyone has access to, it's probably just linked to one person's email and one password. If anything goes wrong, that's going to make it harder to track down exactly where the issue was, exactly where how the vulnerability was exposed. And then also, if you're sharing passwords between accounts, it just makes it easier if there's one of those large scale breaches. Instead of, if you're the subject of a large scale breach, it's not necessarily that someone is individually going through, a hacker is going through their entire spreadsheet and saying, oh yeah, let's target this person named, Sam Smith. Sorry, I just picked two really common names. Not Sam Smith, the singer, but they're great. But let's target this person specifically. No, they're going to go and target every single email and every single password that they have on really common websites to see to see what sticks. So if you're using the same password for multiple accounts, that's where you could run into a problem. You can use something like a password manager to have a unique password for every account. A lot of browsers even just have them installed that you can just like I know Chrome does, Safari does, Apple does with their products. So you're just generating a random password that sometimes you don't even know, but it's unique. And if you're just auto logging in on only your devices, as long as it's just your private devices, you can maybe assume that you're a little safer. When you're logging in on something on a public device, that's maybe when you would also want to use multi-factor. And I know if I'm ever doing anything on a public computer or even on any of my work computers, that's when on those accounts I always say, nope, this is a public device. Send a text to my phone, call me, send me an email so I can verify my identity.
Yeah, very, very true.
Going along with passwords, you said like the type of password. So like people often don't use challenging passwords, so they'll use
Password 1.
Yeah.
Password 1, 2, 3,
I was
4,
going
5.
to look up the most common ones that get.
I just saw a list of them. I don't know if it's
1, 2, 3,
necessarily
4,
true,
5
but it's
is
like
the one.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it would also be like shift. So the exclamation point, the @ sign, the £, the money, the $sign, something like that. Yeah, password 1, QWERTY, I think was one of them.
Yeah.
Don't use it, guys. Don't use it. I mean, hopefully we don't need to tell you, our very security savvy audience.
Very true.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
But tell your family.
Yes.
Don't use QWERTY.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. I mean, let's maybe just take a quick look at what's going on Twitter and then go into question 3.
Perfect. Yeah. I know. Yeah. Because I think this is a pretty good one from Arslan. The most common mistake is that they think security threats end when they go home, which is really true. I mean, you shouldn't be thinking about work 24 hours a day, but just know that there's always a vulnerability, and to just be aware of it, even on the back of your mind, like on the weekend. Don't talk about that you're at a sales meeting for a week and nobody's going to be at the office, or or remember to change your passwords every couple of months. Just try to just think about it.
And if you're in charge of security, if you're working in IT, just prompt your employees to have to change their password every few months.
Yes.
Yeah, every month, every few weeks.
Usually at an inopportune time.
Whatever.
When you're desperately trying to prep for a meeting. You have to,
So that's
related to
good practice.
To Claire's, when you leave the office, that's also like physical security. So with your laptops, and it's in your car. And we were talking about this recently, how they have figured out how to track your laptop in your car. It's happening in the San Francisco area, I guess. And breaking into the car.
Yeah, with like Bluetooth.
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I was actually just reading, before we go into question 3, I was reading an article. It was like just sort of a funny article that the New York Times posted. It was just someone's account of they lost their AirPod on the subway, and their account of trying to then track it down because they lost it through a subway grate. And because they were a New York Times journalist, they were obviously prying a bit more into the whole process of what it's like when you lose something. And they were saying laptops are really commonly lost. And if you lose your physical laptop, that's a huge security issue. I mean, not to mention the fact that it's inconvenient, but it's huge.
Oh, it is huge.
Yeah.
It really is.
Or your phone, because a lot of people now are using their phones for work. It serves a dual purpose.
Right.
Personal and professional.
Yeah, or even like when you work at a coffee shop and you go to the bathroom, and so many people just leave their stuff on the table.
Really?
Still.
Yes.
Yeah. It actually, I only know it happened recently, just part of my neighborhood Facebook page. Somebody was working at a coffee shop, left their iPhone when they went to go to the bathroom, and of course somebody stole it. So don't, again,
Common sense.
Sense, but it's funny how many people will fall for, or just forget, or I guess maybe they think they're more secure than they are.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move into question number 3?
We shall.
Yes.
Question number 3. This is an interesting one. I'm going to be really interested to see what our Twitter
Yeah, me too.
participants think. It's, should governments do more to increase citizens' cybersecurity awareness? This is a tough one. it's gonna
Right.
it's really it would be really hard to do, I think.
Yeah.
And I think in some sense I was also just listening to this on the radio the other day. It was someone who was someone has just recently been sort of the chief security person for the US, so for the intelligence community. And she was being interviewed on the radio, and she was saying that it's hard to strike a balance between you want to make sure that your public is informed without also making your public terrified.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a really, really difficult balance to strike when you have a public who, I mean, national security is so much, it seems a lot more daunting than, like I said earlier, someone hacked into your Amazon account. And for the layperson, for your everyday civilian, having good cybersecurity practices is important. And if something happens to you, yes, it could probably impact you personally. Yes, it could probably impact whatever enterprise you work in. Hopefully that you don't have any contracts with the government. That's when it could become a national security issue.
Well, I was thinking, we have Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Does the general public know what that is? I mean, we know because we're in the industry. I think the industry knows. I think people who work in cybersecurity and security know what that is. And the government does a little bit with awareness. You see emails, you see some things out there on social media. I just don't know that that's enough. And should the government do more? Should it be up to companies to do more? I don't know. I was just thinking the people who don't work for a company like ours, where we have the security awareness training, and we have the tests and everything. If you stay at home, if you're a stay-at-home mom, do you know what these things are?
That's a good point.
And do you watch Jeopardy?
Oh,
Sometimes.
Did
I
you watch
watched
Jeopardy Go?
I did so well in that category.
Well, so
The
there was a whole
category.
category on cybersecurity.
Yes.
And they did not do well. And these are like some of the brightest minds. They
Oh,
know so
wow,
much
yeah.
about so many topics.
And they
but
They didn't know BYOD.
Right. So there's a couple things that I
Wow.
saw on Twitter when this was happening. One was that the general public doesn't know about this type of thing.
Yeah.
The second is that the industry, and like every industry, like everybody, we have our own language, we have our own lingo that general people might not know what we're talking about.
Right, right. Yep. Yeah, and I do think the tech is very lingo heavy, and that it's not. It's also an insular community, so if you're not really part of it, you won't hear it. But then I was also thinking, what we wouldn't think about as being government run, but even having education in public schools on
Yeah, that's a
what
good point.
these things
Girl
are.
Scouts have a badge, I think, for security.
Yeah,
Security.
right. So it's
Yeah.
like just, Security 101, classes in school, things like that, where it doesn't necessarily need to be this, like a new law of the land, which is needed, but it can just be educating people starting at a young age on how to protect themselves online.
Yeah.
Because I think we also not to get political, but we saw the implication of not understanding tech in the election and how it can be, catastrophic. So, having education in schools and things like that the government can help to facilitate, I think would be, and then they don't necessarily have to be in charge of the messaging. They can empower experts
Educators who
and
know.
educators who actually know what they're talking about
Yeah.
to disseminate the message.
Yeah.
Because I think lots of people are saying on Twitter is that the government doesn't know any more than some of the average people do. So it's how can they empower people that are experts, to share their knowledge, and I think schooling is probably the easiest way.
And perhaps rightfully, I think I see this a lot, and I hear this a lot over on our CIO Leadership Live show. And what I see and hear a lot is that a lot of CIOs who work in public sectors, whether it's education or they're working just for the state, for example, or a city, they don't tend to be on the forefront of tech adoption. And for good reason. You want to sort of let someone else figure out the mistakes, preferably probably a private company figure out what's wrong first. So then once they get on board, they can feel pretty confident that it's secure and safe. So I think that is also a problem, is that the government in the public sector in general is just not a very early or quick adopter of tech trends.
Right. That is true.
Do you ever see, at least I do on my bank, when I log into my bank, they have like an alert or a link or something to learn more how to protect yourself online or be more aware. So I guess banks are trying to do it.
Right. Yeah. And other social media platforms, I think especially, are really, so many people obviously use them, and it's not necessarily the government, but how can they do little things like that? Like, this is why, two-factor authentication is important, or this is why your password shouldn't be QWERTY, or just little things to just kind of drop nuggets of knowledge. I don't think people want to feel like they're being preached to, and if it's a topic they already don't understand, I would reject it. It's like, what, I don't really love math. And if somebody then just dropped this like hour-long TED Talk about math, I would just be like, okay, I don't understand it, so I'm not listening. But if it was...
Talk's a good idea.
Yeah,
About cybersecurity.
But yes, well, I guess for us, we would be into that. I'd be into a TED Talk about it, but maybe the average person wouldn't. But I think it's all just having like those nuggets, those like snackable kind of almost cybersecurity in meme form.
Yeah. What are people saying during the chat? Anybody have any thoughts?
So let's see. One of this.
Yeah.
A lot of people are sort of split. I think, like I said, a lot of people are saying, the public sector isn't exactly on the forefront of tech innovation. So that's where it's difficult. And when breaking through the bureaucracy can be quite difficult, which I agree. But it seems like some people are also saying, it shouldn't be the government saying this is the law now, or this, the law is multi-factor authentication, which would never happen. But they're not saying, yes, the government should instate laws, but it's saying it should be more of a social conversation.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Than
more
confined.
Of education and
right.
awareness.
And I like this from Will Kelly, where he said that, and I think we kind of touched on this with education, is that the government itself is probably not the right messenger, just because people know that they're not experts, and it's like, who are you to tell me? You don't even know. And so it's, finding, he said, nonprofits need to have cybersecurity message for their volunteers. Companies need to bake it into all facets of the business, as opposed to feeling like you're getting this, getting told what to do from the government, which I think people just naturally reject. So maybe it's all about the way that the message is conveyed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm also seeing, but I'm seeing some people. Ed said, yep, hacks, breaches have national impacts. I think he probably meant national impacts as well as business impacts. And that's true. I mean, if you're, sure, you might be a private company, but perhaps you're a security firm that is really helping out the intelligence community, or you work in manufacturing and you're a government contractor. Just because you're a private company doesn't mean that you don't aid the public sector in some way. So making sure that, especially when you have clients that are in the public sector, that your employees are well aware of that, and then that might mean that you take security and security training, security practices to an even higher level.
Right.
And maybe that means you have to change your password all the time, but it's for the good. It's for good reason. All right, are you guys ready to move on to question 4?
Yes.
All right, question 4. How do you ensure the products and services companies sell are secure? I would love to see what the tech talk community says about this, because I'm sure we have a lot of CIOs, CTOs, CSOs who are going to have, CISOs, a lot of information about this. My idea is kind of, I feel like I've said this 500 times, err on the side of caution. And you cannot assume that anything, any vendor, any physical product is 100% safe and secure if it is connected in any way.
Yeah.
Well, and then if you are somebody who is producing those products or services, bake security into the process.
Yes,
from
security
day
by
one.
design.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually was thinking a lot of a tech talk that we did on our YouTube channel as well as the CSO live stream. Michelle, if you remember, with J.M. Porup, we talked about printer
printers.
security.
Yep.
And he had a lot of really interesting things to say, which is, when printers were just meant for printing and maybe making your occasional copy, it wasn't really that big of a deal, and it wasn't necessarily thought of as a security threat. But now as printers are sort of baked into every single enterprise, I mean, everyone has a printer. It's just a common problem, like, oh, the printer's broken, or like, yes, we need to figure out the new printer. When that is going to be part of your network, how do you make sure that that physical product or that physical printer is secure? And it's not, and I think what he was saying is, make sure it's partitioned off of your most sensitive the sensitive parts of your network. And it's really does start with security from day one.
Very, very true. Yeah, I mean, definitely just making sure the products are secure by design.
Yep.
But I also think, it kind of goes back to what we were saying at the start of the chat, which is, making sure that people are educated fundamentally on how unsecure the internet is. And everybody shops, for example, if we just think about online shopping, everybody shops online. And there are so many, if you buy something from Amazon, then you get all these other companies feeding you cookied products. And it can be really hard to have that education of, is this a legit? What makes this site legit and this site not legit? And so kind of having that education so that you can make, before you even buy something, a choice to say, okay, this site I know is shady because it doesn't have, a verified payment process, or it doesn't have, I'm noticing that, like, there's lots of weird typos. So, like, where did it originate? And I think little things like that can help to educate end users to make, again, the entire system more secure. Because now I just think people don't realize how easy it is to be duped. Just, doing whatever you do best online.
Yeah.
I think we've had this discussion before on one of our Twitter chats about security, about ensuring the products are secure when they go out. And how do you do that? Should there be rules? Should there be laws that they have to do something?
Right. And I think isn't, okay, maybe Twitter can sound off and let me know if I'm just making this up, but I think, Europe was proposing making IoT secure by design, that you have to have security measures baked into new IoT. I don't know if it applies to existing. I can't imagine that it would.
That would probably be really
that
difficult.
would be
unless they're going to recall every Amazon Alexa.
Yeah, I know. So I don't. Again, Twitter, call me out if I'm just making that up, but I'm pretty sure that I did see something about, on the heels of GDPR, how can we just make products, when you buy them, they have security mechanisms baked in. And the U.S., if that is a thing, the U.S. should follow suit for sure, just because, again, it's a lot to expect people to do this themselves.
Yeah. Jack Gold actually made a really good point, which is, I think, mostly agreeing with us, saying first, assume the apps are not secure and build a security strategy around that. Next, this is a good point, I thought, require vendors to provide you with a regular update of product flaws and discovered breaches, which he said, which almost no customers do. So that's a good, that could be, maybe it's written into your contract saying, this is what you need to tell us quarterly or yearly what you've been doing to ensure that your product is as secure as possible, what have been any potential breaches, and how did you then fix that, so that you can't prevent attacks completely. You can only prepare for one. So you want to make sure that the vendors that you're dealing with are prepared for that. You can't just say we're going to eliminate all attacks. That's never going to happen. You need to actively prepare.
Right. And, there's a different types of attacks every day. So there's no way that you can prepare as cyber criminals change and get more sophisticated. But you can do your best to either bake it into the technology of the device, or to, have that open communication with the end user. Like, these are vulnerabilities that we've seen, just to make them aware.
Yeah, sure. Getting a really good a lot of really good answers over on Twitter.
Some good memes too there.
I know, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Scott said hackers are in love with my printer.
Yes, it actually is. I've read that
Yes.
article. It's a good one. You should read it.
Yeah.
If you're on Twitter, click on Scott Schober, Scott BVS's article. It's really good. I read it actually when I first started, so it's a good one.
Hackers are in love with my printer. Yes, I'm glad. I remember when we were talking about printer security, we were like, wow, this is something that you think about. But then
Well, people thought it was going to be boring too.
JM had so much great
Yeah.
information about it. So also be sure to go check that out over on YouTube, The Importance of Printer Security, or something like that. That's the title. Brent is saying that he looks for market-tested solutions. The market that tests things is comprised of both the hacking economy and the security economy. It isn't good enough to say that you weren't hacked because nobody tried. That's kind of a good point. Instead, we want security in the face of hacking.
Oh, wow.
That's an interesting way to look at it. You can't say, oh, well, this works because no one
Yeah, they
tried.
haven't even
Right.
tested
Yeah.
it.
That's
Yeah.
a good point. I
Very
like that.
good.
Yeah. Let's see what else we're getting. Okay. Yep. Ed is saying, yep, agreed. You can't you immediately have to distrust any solution that says it's 100%
Right.
secure.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Nothing will ever be 100% secure. You can only be mostly ready. You just have to be aware that you could be the victim of an attack. And a lot of people are saying, yep, IoT security design is being considered in many places, including Europe.
Oh,
You
yay,
were right.
yay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you,
I went-
Wayne.
yeah.
And maybe let's just take one or two more answers to this question. Will Kelly said, you can't in the real world assure that your products and vendors are completely secure. Vet the vendor's development and security compliance standards. That's a good idea. Look for options to security test new products and apps as part of an acceptance process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yes.
Nice.
And maybe let's see one or two. I'm not sure, Claire. If
Oh
you're-
yeah, and Arslan said ask but verify, which I think is always a great kind of words
great
to
mantra.
live. Yes, words to live by when it comes to security.
Yeah.
Yep. And Peter even gave a few examples of specific questions you
Oh,
can
good.
ask, like, do you participate in, subscribe to known security frameworks? Do you know the CIS top 20 controls? Are you a member of an industry body dealing with security? And he said, think of IoT in that situation. And are they in compliance with latest regulations?
Those are great questions to ask.
That could maybe be the first one to ask.
Yeah, that's really good. Good
Yeah.
job.
All right. And then let's move on to question number 5, if everyone is ready.
Yep.
Question number 5. What technology can companies use to reduce employee exposure to security threats? Well,
I have an idea.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that IDG is using them, but I'm pretty sure they've got tools that prevent suspicious or suspect emails from getting to us at all.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
that's a good
Yeah,
point.
just, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a moat around the castle. Just, yeah. Stop them before they start. And actually, in the same vein, I had written, just having 2-factor authentication.
I had that
find
too,
that's
yeah.
so, I really like it. And I
Me
try
too,
to
I
set
like
it
it
up
too.
whenever I can. And it's just that added layer of security. It's just a no-brainer to kind of always do and always have on your work email or on your work computer. And then, similar to what you said, having simulations. I think those phishing emails, they just keep you on your toes.
Yep.
So a breach, a threat can come at any time. You're never safe. It can just happen, and it can be a click of a button, and now you've exposed your organization. But I think having those little simulations going out to your employees can help just make them aware and not get complacent. It's easy to get complacent when you're working. We're all really busy, and so that kind of shakes things up.
Yeah, and I think aside from education, giving them these tools to use, like multi-factor authentication, like making them change their passwords all the time, like these tests, I think would be really helpful. I really still like, I'm really sorry, I forget who mentioned it, the idea of using a real-world scenario and saying, this is what happened, this is how it could have been prevented, and this is how we're not going to be like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, those cautionary tales.
Yeah.
I think they work in other industries. Don't be that person.
Yeah.
So, why not for security?
I was thinking about this and how AI is being talked about a lot lately,
Sure.
and how AI could be used for security.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
So one thing I saw, CSO's got a few articles on AI-driven tools. One person wrote about using AI to advance identity and access management, the IAM, so that one day passwords might be replaced by a smarter AI-based system. And then another one, which sounds very futuristic, is the idea that AI would track every user within an organization based on roles, privileges, and common actions. And so if you deviate from any of those, then from the norm, you'd be flagged and require the person to use a second form of authentication, such as biometrics, fingerprints, facial features.
That's really cool. Yeah, and I mean, I think also just going beyond the password, to your point, what's next in terms of password? And I think, two-factor authentication, I feel like that's kind of what, the rotary phone of what will be the next phase of what a password looks like. What is it? But I think using AI, that's so cool. I really like both of those ideas, and I hadn't thought about it. And it ties back into the AI conversation, like what are practical use cases for AI?
Yeah. We actually just talked about that the other
day.
day.
We just had a really, really great discussion with Serdar about, these practical use cases of AI. And one thing that I was saying is that, when you hear AI, you think a lot of maybe like chatbots online, like customer service chatbots, or, you think robots. It all sounds very futuristic, but in reality, AI is not something that needs to be really futuristic. Serdar made a really great point. You can also check this out over on our YouTube channel about how AI, I think, sort of has this misconception. It's correct in many ways that AI can be used to predict and say, okay, all of these trends have happened in the past, so this is what we can expect or this is what we think. But AI can also be used as a really valuable tool to say, this is what normally happens, and this particular event is out of the status quo. So why is that? And flagging that for manual assessment. Because you can't expect one person to track every single user's logins and every single location that they logged in on. But if you look at something, if you're using AI to look at all of your employees' logins and you notice, hey, someone logged in from this country across the world, but I see them at their desk right over there. You know that that's obviously a security issue. And that, I think, is a really, really great and practical use case for AI that is easy for people who maybe are not as deeply embedded in this security space to dismiss. It's really, AI isn't all robots and autonomous cars.
Exactly. It's not Westworld, guys.
It's not. No, it's not. Not yet.
Not yet.
Let's see what we're getting over on Twitter. Peter said, we just refreshed. So we're getting, Peter said, while technology plays a role, a company should begin to understand the differences between a good security program, that's in quotes, good, and a defensible one. Once they get that, then start looking at appropriate measures, policies, controls, and technology. Interesting. I would be interested to hear anyone's anecdotal experience of using AI as a security tool. If anyone watching has an example, that is really, really interesting to me, especially when you're dealing with really large data sets. That could be. I think that also might be something used, for example, by the financial services industry or the financial industry in general. When you get a call saying, hey, you don't usually make this purchase. Did you make this? And sometimes it's like, hey, you just spent $2,000 on plane tickets and a hotel because you're going somewhere, and then you say, yep, that was indeed me. But it's sometimes even just for little small amounts, like you're saying, oh, someone spent $3 at this gas station across the country, and then you immediately spent $25 at the grocery store. Being able to sort through all of that data and look for inconsistencies.
I was thinking about that actually too when you were talking about patterns and using AI, and I feel like banking has to, because you get a call too. I just bought a house, and that was obviously these big expenses. And before they would even let some of those payments go through, I had to call them and verify that it was in fact me making those payments. And when you leave the country, they like for you to
tell Tell
Yes.
them. Yeah.
Right.
Even leaving the state sometimes if you're going to
Right.
another part of the country.
I've gotten flagged. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and I've gotten flagged just from being here in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, it can be a bit cumbersome to answer the phone and be like, "Yes, that was me," or
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're about to check out and you're like, how am I supposed to pay for this now? I have to use a different card, but what if that gets flagged? I mean, it can be a pain, but it's a pain for good reason because you don't want to be the person who doesn't have that sort of system set up, or you don't want to be that bank that doesn't have that sort of system set up,
Yeah.
and then your customers are getting all of their money swiped from their account.
Right. It's
I mean-
true. I mean, it's your
and-
money. I mean, just call me.
Yeah, yeah.
Call
I had
me.
a-
Give me
babe.
a call. No big deal.
Funny anecdote story. So a friend of mine, the bank called him, but he was in line at like Trader Joe's, had a carriage full of groceries.
Oh my
And they
gosh.
called and said, is this you? This purchase was made, like, I forget what country it was. He says, that wasn't me, but don't cancel my account yet. I need to get
I know,
through
I'm
checkout.
standing in line. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And that, I feel like that's sort of obviously probably within the past decade, that's the new pattern. Instead of you swipe someone's credit card because you stole their wallet and you go to Best Buy and buy a ton of TVs or a ton of, gaming systems, you are instead, I mean, obviously people are getting your information from online. They're getting it from card skimmers on ATMs. That has happened to me.
There's even skimming online, though.
Yep.
Yeah. Whew.
JM writes about that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
CSO.
bad. And then I also too wonder, I actually the other day, during the holidays, I was doing holiday shopping. I somehow was there with my 2 kids, and I was in the checkout line. And I went into the diaper bag, the great pit of my diaper bag, no wallet. So I had no way to pay for this
Heartbreaking.
thing. Both of my kids are screaming. And the woman at the checkout was like, "Oh, well, you have your iPhone. Just use Apple Pay."
Yes.
And that was a whole new world
Yeah.
for me. And then I was thinking, my phone can track my location. And so then like you can get even more sort of targeted spending habits if you're constantly using Apple Pay, because you can say, okay, she's been at this mall, then this grocery store, all in this area. Why is she also making, this purchase over there? Like this
Sure.
is, so there's ways to, as technology gets more sophisticated, that you can use AI to really track user behaviors and understand the types of buying decisions that they might make, so you can flag a weird purchase, for example. Why did she buy that? It's from Amazon. She shops at Amazon, but she would never buy that, So that was something I thought too.
I've said this before. Apple Pay has really changed my life. I was walking home from
I
a
love
yoga.
this story.
I was walking home from a yoga class one night, and it was in November. We're here in Massachusetts. It's very cold. There's snow on the ground. But I was walking back from my yoga class, and I passed my favorite ice cream place. And I was
Nice.
like, wow, you know what I really want right now is ice cream. It's 20 degrees outside. I'm walking outdoors, but I was like, I really want some. And I didn't bring my wallet to yoga. I just kind of, kept it light. I had my yoga mat. I had my keys. And I walked by. I was like, oh, I want it. They scooped my ice cream, and I got to the checkout. I was like, oh, my God. I don't have money. And on top of that, I didn't have my frequent flyer, my frequent visitor card. But I was like, wait, do you guys accept Apple Pay? And they said, yes. Problem solved.
Yes, I'm telling you, I didn't know. It was a whole new world for
Yes.
me. So now I feel like sometimes I'll just, especially at Whole Foods, I feel very official when I'm just like,
Yeah.
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 All right. Let's launch in then to our bonus question if everyone's ready. So our
Yeah.
bonus question, we usually have 5, now we have 6. Just for today. What enterprise tech do you love right now? This will be also a really, really great question for our audience. So I'm very intrigued to see what they have to say about
I
this.
agree.
And full disclosure, we're going to be gathering these and writing an article about this.
Yeah, so no pressure, but say something smart.
Oh, Wayne said over on YouTube. I think, Claire, this is for you. Children are a security vulnerability, which are wet and loud, no stealth, social engineering vulnerable, hard to patch, no change management, hard to patch,
Yes,
no change management. True story.
That's very true.
I mean,
Yes.
for you too, Michelle,
And
but at
each
least you don't have two
each
little
version
kids.
has new challenges to
Yes,
overcome.
exactly, because you have a more upgraded, educated model, because you're just freshly out of college.
That's
But-
funny. Oh, that's really good. Well, Wayne, if you're watching, what enterprise tech do you love right now? Let us know.
Yes.
That's really funny.
Well, actually, I had mine. We touched on it. But I think I am excited about, I don't know how pervasive it is, but products that are secure by design, because again, and it's funny again, because I'm a mother of young kids. The Disney Plus launch was so unsecure, and every family needed Disney Plus. It had to happen.
Yeah.
But they didn't have two-factor authentication. You just had to type in your very personal information, kind of send it into the ether. So people got hacked the next day. It was a big thing. And it was, again, like if they had just baked in a little bit of security, it would have been still just a great launch, but also a more secure one. So I think hopefully, and I know actually we've touched on this in past chats, that there's not much incentive for organizations to, do this, because a hack for them doesn't do anything. I mean, it doesn't hurt them if you get hacked, but if more
Hurts their reputation.
Yeah, I know. You would think, but I mean, I guess everyone still uses Disney Plus. But
There's only one.
yeah, I know. There is only one. Got to get in the vault. But making sure that whenever you release something, that it's secure. Just having that extra step of security. Does it hurt? No, but it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a good point. I don't know why this hasn't happened yet. Maybe it has, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But when you have sort of these shared family accounts, I don't have a shared Spotify account, but everyone should, even if it's just one billing, everyone should just have their own account and their own passwords. Like, why do you have to share? So I share family with, I don't share family with my Netflix. I share Netflix with my family. And we have one family account, and within that, we have our own.
You're right.
So like none of my family is getting that I like watched all of Cheer, which is really good and you should watch.
Yes.
And not even like in a, like, this is a guilty pleasure way. It was phenomenal. But so not all of my family is saying, hey, do you want to continue watching Cheer? They're getting, why don't I have my own login?
That's very true.
And it's just all linked to one billing account. It's not crazy.
Yeah.
That is true, because I didn't even actually think about that. But yes, we are also on a shared family plan. Yeah. And while we have different sub accounts within.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, we should also have a different login, because I always have to ask my husband, what's the password? Because he always changes it. And then I'm
Good
locked out of
security practice.
Yeah. But then I'm locked out of Netflix, and I'm halfway through the marriage story, and then what happens?
You don't want to leave Adam Driver hanging.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
All right, let's see what some people are saying over on Twitter. We've got some good answers. Michelle, unless you have any.
Oh, I've got one
Sure.
that I like using a lot these days, and it's collaboration tools.
Oh, yes.
So we use
Yes.
Slack. Editorial uses Slack.
So
and it's
easy.
been key for connecting everybody, East Coast, West Coast, international.
I do love Slack.
And it's instant.
Yes. I really agree with that. We should actually have a chat about, I think haven't we talked about having a chat about collaboration tools? But I do love Slack. It's a good one.
So Wayne said his bonus answer is, look, I work for Microsoft. But that being said, Graph API tied to ML, it seems like, he's saying, just because I work for Microsoft doesn't mean I can't love this. Tied to ML and massive data sets are amazing. Even knowing the magic in the industry and being deep in the space, it's moving so fast. Some days I feel like, I still feel it's like alchemy.
And Scott Schober actually said 5G is looking promising, which is very timely, because our next chat in 2 weeks is actually about 5G in the enterprise. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm actually interested to just be on that chat kind of as a lurker, because I don't know a ton about 5G, because it really hasn't hit mass yet.
We talk a lot about 5G over on the Tech Talk channel, and we talk both about what it means for enterprise and a little bit what it means for consumers. And on the consumer end, I have a really good understanding just because I am a consumer, and also on the enterprise side, I do have a very good idea of what's going to go on, but how it's going to impact different industries is really interesting. Like, for example, manufacturing, it's going to be really helpful because you're going to be able to connect a lot of IoT devices and sensors to really simplify the manufacturing process. But I would be really interested to see how it's going to be working for specific industries. And on top of that, more importantly than that, I would really like to see what our Tech Talk communities users are going to, how they're going to apply it to their industry. That's gonna
Yeah.
just. I really like these specific anecdotes. They're really interesting.
Agreed.
Great.
Awesome.
Well, if everyone is done, then I guess it's time to wrap up.
It is. I know. We're at the top of the hour. This was good, guys.
Yeah. So before we go, I would just like to say
we get our own shout outs.
Yeah, on my end, please check out the IDG Tech Talk YouTube channel. We do new videos almost every day about enterprise tech, how-tos, everything under the sun. So be sure to go over, subscribe to it, like this video if you're watching along on YouTube, and definitely be sure to check us out almost every day. Michelle?
To go along with that, we have another live video next week.
Yes, good point.
With J.R. Raphael from
Nice.
Computer World. We're talking about
Yeah, that's gonna be
Android
great.
predictions and trends.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I did just touch on this, but our next IDG Tech Talk is on February 6th, which is 2 weeks from now. And we're going to be talking about 5G. So please join the conversation. It's happening on Twitter. And then next month, we'll probably have another one of these live IDG Tech Talks. So please continue to support them. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, and if you liked it, let us know.
Yes. And if you didn't, don't let us know.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, so much.
Thanks.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.